Hello! Today I'm going to be showing you all the books I've read in June and all the books I want to read in July. I definitely read a lot more than I expected in June. I read 6 books and to be honest, I'd planned to read at most 4. 2 of the books were specifically for a book tour and the other 2 were just books that I'd already read at the start of the month, like immediately, that I knew I wanted to get through ASAP, so I read those. I ended up reading an extra 2. So in total I read 6 books and I really thought actually that I would read one of those 2 books for the book tour at the, finish it at least by the start of July, but I read it all on the last day of June, which you can see in my reading vlog that I posted last week on Friday, the 1st of July. But yeah, let's get into what I read in June. The first book that I read in June was actually one that I'd started just a little bit at the end of May. And it's Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I'd been a bit hesitant about reading this just because of how much everyone had hyped this book up. I've loved Emily Henry's writing since Beach Read came out in 2020, but I was just still a bit worried for some reason that I wouldn't like this book. And also lots of people were crying, so that definitely scared me because whilst I like to cry when reading, in a good way, I still get a bit stressed out about reading a book when people have that kind of reaction to reading a certain book. But this novel just exceeded my expectations. It was so good. I completely understand why everyone fell in love with it. It's about Nora, who's a literary agent, and Charlie, who is an editor, and they both obviously work in the same publishing company. Nora's younger sister Libby basically convinces her / kind of forces her to go on holiday in this small town called Sunshine Falls, and just for a couple of weeks, just the 2 of them, since they hadn't been really talking much as they used to for a while. And that's where she bumps into Charlie, the editor, who she doesn't seem to get along with, and you actually get to see their first meeting at the start of the book. But yeah, this book was just so funny, hilarious, I couldn't stop laughing. Their banter between Charlie and Nora, just perfect. It was so funny. And also just a lot of the scenes I really related to, in terms of Nora being the older sister who eventually had to take care of Libby, her younger sister, because of certain reasons that I won't spoil, but this is definitely now one of my favourite books. This book, Legendborn, and The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary are 3 books that I've been recommending to everyone non-stop since I've read them each. But yeah, that was my first book of June. My second book was actually Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor. I was gifted this novel by Rock the Boat Publishing, and I planned to read this book in July, specifically just because the blue cover made me think of summer, so I thought, okay, I'll read it then. But I literally couldn't, I kept staring at it on my bookshelf and I ended up reading it basically immediately after I got it, because this was a book that arrived at the end of May. And it was so good. It's about a young boy called Zachary who finds out he's the descendant of essentially China's first emperor, as he's the one who united all the warring states and created what is now, the country of China. He essentially, I don't know how to explain this book without spoiling it, so I'm gonna read the synopsis from the back of the book just because it's kind of a complex plot. So it says, meet Zachary Ying, a regular 12-year-old gamer who happens to be a long-lost descendant of the first emperor of China, the Dragon Emperor. Now the emperor is back from the dead, he needs Zach's help to battle mythological creatures, and he's not going to take no for an answer. This book, I'm not even joking, it made me cry. It's a middle grade novel, but it made me cry. As a whole, I feel it's definitely an emotional book, and a book that, whilst it's definitely more targeted towards Asian diaspora, I feel like most people who are children of diaspora can understand and relate to this novel, as most people of colour can to other works written by other authors of colour that may not be the same ethnicity as them. It was so good. It's already out in America, but it comes out July 7th, I believe, or at the start of July here in the UK. So if you've been keeping an eye out, or if you enjoyed this author's first novel, Iron Widow, then you should definitely pick this book up because it is so worth the read. It's just such a wonderful book. But this was my second book of June. The next book, I guess, that I read in June was the Fangirl Volume 1 by Rainbow Rowell and illustrated by Gabby Nam. I kept putting off buying this graphic novel, but yeah, I ended up buying it at the start of June actually, or halfway through June, and I just read through it so quickly within, I believe, like one sitting. So I'm looking forward to reading part 2. This is a graphic novel adaptation essentially of Rainbow Rowell's Fangirl, which is a book that I absolutely love, which I mentioned in my first video, but this was just such a fun read, pretty quick. There were some parts that I found a bit confusing, like the way they moved from scene to scene. I feel like they could have made it a bit more obvious, because sometimes it would be like the next scene would happen in the same place, but it's like a completely different scene essentially. Like the setting is the same, but what happens in that scene is completely different, and it was just really jarring. So I had to like pause and then figure out what I was reading every time. But I look forward to reading volume 2 this month, which comes out I believe next week or something in the UK, just because it's already out in America and it came out at the end of June. But this was my 3rd book of June. My 4th book was Spy Family Volume 1. Sadly, I can't find Volume 2 anywhere in the UK. Amazon, Waterstones, Book Depository, nowhere has it. So I'm just waiting until August to go and buy Volume 2 and 4, just because those are the 2 I can't find anywhere. Had I found those 2, I would have binge read the entire series up to Volume 7, but I couldn't. But it's a story about a spy, an assassin, and a little girl who's a telepath, and they're all essentially kind of a dysfunctional family, but it's so sweet. Again, it's much easier if I just read the synopsis. Not wanting this to depend on others, Twilight has his work cut out for him, procuring both a wife and child for his mission to infiltrate an elite private school. What he doesn't know is that the wife he's chosen is an assassin, and the child he's adopted is a telepath. So yeah, he's on a dangerous mission for the betterment of the world. Yeah, this is very fun and just sweet. Again, as I've mentioned in my first video, I highly recommend this book. And the last 2 books that I read in June were for a book tour. The first one was Black Sun, which I read during my reading vlog that I posted last week. I enjoyed it for the most part, but at certain points I did get a bit bored, just because I don't know, I had to stop reading and I just couldn't feel like I wanted to get back into it. But it's a high fantasy adult novel, and I honestly couldn't tell you what the plot is about, because there's no clear cut like villain or anything like there are in other fantasy novels you might find. All the characters are pretty much morally grey, so you can't, you know. This was the 5th book that I read, and it was part of the Fevered Star book tour hosted by Pride Book Tours. And the 2nd book, which is a book I'm meant to review for July 3rd. My review should be up on Goodreads and my Instagram account if you want to go check it out. But I definitely enjoyed the sequel more. A lot of the characters tend to travel to different areas in the world a lot more in this book, so I felt like the world was just getting bigger, and I just love that part of high fantasy novels. But also you get to find out more about certain characters' pasts that you thought you knew, or you knew they were hiding something, but you didn't know what. So we're still getting there with like unveiling secrets, but yeah, I'm really excited to read book 3. No idea when that's coming out, since the first book came out in 2019, I believe, or 2020, and Fevered Star just came out in April this year. So I believe the 3rd book is probably going to come out in 2024 or something. I'm really excited to read book 3 once it comes out. And these are all the books that I read in June. So we can now move on to my July TBR. The first book is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I had planned to read this in June. It was one of the 4 books I'd originally planned to read that month. But I wasn't able to. I was thinking to either read it in the first 7 days of June, which I couldn't because I had read Book Lovers and then Zacharying, and then I had to start Black Sun. And then I said, okay, I'll read it at the end of June on the last 7 days. Also couldn't do that. So I thought, on the last day, I was like on my Instagram, like, do you guys think I will be able to like sneak in one more book after I finish Fevered Star? A lot of people chose 7 Days in June, which I'm happy because it's pretty short, but I wasn't able to, and I'm I ended up starting it today. Today is the 1st of July and I'm almost halfway through and I am loving it so much. Like, I've been annotating it and like I started tabbing like some of my favorite scenes already. These two characters, their chemistry is just crazy. The humor, sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a bit, it's a little, like there was one part saying that's a bit corny, but like corny in a nice way. But I know this is going to be a new favorite book of mine, and I plan to read The Perfect Find, which is also by Tia Williams. It's also been, the rights have been bought for that book to be made into a movie with Netflix. So I'm looking forward to reading that as well. But this book is about two black writers who were sort of teenage sweethearts when they were in their senior year of high school. And they fell in love over the course of 7 days, which is in the title. Then something happened, I'm not there yet, so I don't know what happened exactly, to push them apart, and later on they both became writers. She writes erotica, he writes literary fiction. And I've got to the part, and it's kind of explained in the blurb, but it's kind of like they write to each other through their books, or rather they write about each other and he's kind of writing to her about their books. But Eva and Shane, I think, are going to be a new bookish couple that I fall in love with, and I really do recommend this book. And I say this having not even finished it yet, but I've heard nothing but great things about this book from everyone whose opinion I trust, so I believe this will be a good book from start to finish. The second book that I want to read in July is Delilah Green Doesn't Care. This was another book that I had kind of wanted to read in June. It wasn't part of my official TBR, but it was one that I was like, if I have time, I want to see if I can read this. But I wasn't able to, so I'm going to read it in July instead. It's been on my TBR since like I first heard about it when probably around the start of this year or the end of last year. I've heard like nothing but great reviews. So many people have recommended it, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. I think this might be the second book I read this month. The next book that I want to read in July is Love Radio by Ebony Liddell. I literally only had 2 people recommend this, and one of them wasn't even a recommendation to me, it was a recommendation to TikTok in general, and I've been struggling to not pick this up. Like, it's the same problem I've had with 7 Days in June, Delilah Green, and another book, as well as this, to like, when I got it, I had to just push myself to not pick it up because I had other books I needed to read. But it's a YA contemporary novel. It just sounds so fun. I don't really know what the plot is exactly. I just realized I just bought it based off 2 people telling me it's really good, and one of them was more like telling me a scene from the book, but it wasn't necessarily telling me what the book's about. So I'm gonna read a bit of the synopsis. The tagline says, "The best love story is the one you write yourself." Prince Jones is passionate about music and romance, dishing out relationship on his love radio show. But his own love life is looking kind of quiet, until he meets Danny Ford. Danny isn't checking for anybody. She's focused on her plan to move to New York City to become a famous author and avoid her feelings about what happened at that party a few months ago. When the two meet, sparks fly, but Danny's not looking to get derailed. So she gives Prince just 3 dates to convince her that he's worth falling for. This, oh my god, yeah. I'm gonna love this book, I just know it. Oh, I'm so excited to read this. It's been so long since I've read like YA books, let alone YA contemporary. So I had to do it, reading a love story between 2 black kids. The next book is another YA contemporary fiction featuring 2 young black teenagers. And it's Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry. This is a book that has been so hyped up on Instagram, TikTok, and I've just been wanting to read it since last year. It's very much a rom-com. It says, a passionate, heartfelt and addictive rom-com full of juicy secrets and a leap-off-page chemistry about having the courage to be honest, live in the moment and fall in love. The blurb doesn't say much. All I know is that the main character loses her journal and the main love interest finds it. Other than that, I don't really, it doesn't say much. But I've heard nothing but great things about it. Everyone who's read it seems to have loved it. And a lot of people said it's like their favourite YA book ever. So or at least contemporary YA. So I'm looking forward to reading this as well. The next book was gifted to me by Quakers, and it's Aphrodite and the Duke, which came in June. It comes out, I believe, it doesn't say a date. Oh, August 23rd in the UK. Oh, it comes out in the paperback immediately. It's a historical romance essentially with a black main character, and I thought that's perfect for me. Like, it's everything I'd want to read. Came with really cool goodies, including this, like, I guess playing card. It's like 2 of diamonds. I think it might be part of the series, so that's why it's a 2. But it has the cover, or Aphrodite, the main character, on there, and it says meet the diamond of the season on the other side, on the diamond shaped. It's a second chance romance also, I know that, between her and the Duke, Evander. But I'm looking forward to reading this. It's not that long actually, in terms of like thickness, but also I think it's just over 300 pages, or 350. Okay, it's 369 pages long, and it actually is a dual POV as well, so that should be interesting, because I love being able to read from both characters' points of view when it comes to romance specifically. So I'm looking forward to reading this. And the last book on my July TBR is Not Exactly What I Had in Mind by Kate Brooke. This was also gifted to me by Atlantic Books. They sent it to me in May, if I remember correctly, and it comes out in July, I believe at the start of the month. I just haven't had the time to read it at all. So I might have to read this next after I finish 7 Days in June. It's an adult, I believe, like rom-com novel, rom-com between 2 flatmates, but it also has like a whole cast of characters. I don't want to say much, but I haven't seen many people talk about it. I don't know if there's been a couple arcs that have gone out, but I have not seen a single review. But I guess that just means I can go into this without being influenced by other people's like opinions of the book. So I hope it's just as good as I expect it to be. I just counted and I realized my TBR for July is also 6 books. So fingers crossed, I don't know why I did the peace sign, fingers crossed I managed to get through all 6 of these as well. If so, well, that would be wonderful, because then it means I will have less books to read in August and less books to bring with me on holiday, because I have some books I want to buy when I'm in New York. And I will not have space in my suitcases to bring books I'm reading as well as books I'm buying there. But yeah, this is like my June and July wrap. This is my June wrap up and my July TBR. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. My posting schedule is pretty much just going to be every Monday. The only reason why I posted twice last week was so that I could get this video out today, just so that my TBR and wrap up wouldn't be really late in the month, which would kind of be annoying just for me. But I don't know about you guys if that would bother you, but I know it would bother me. But yeah, hope you all have a lovely day. Bye.